So we've got an incredible story that's come out of Labour. A former East London councillor has been charged with having indecent images of children after a raid at his home by the National Crime Agency. 36-year-old Tom Dewey, who was a councillor in Hackney for a short period of time before standing down due to personal reasons, has been charged as part of an NCA investigation into child abuse images. Now, Dewey became councillor for the de Beauvoir ward, I don't know if I'm pronounced that right, in May 2022. But this was after he was arrested for having indecent images. Now, he was arrested in April 2022. That was a month before he became a councillor, and then he was released under investigation. Keir Starmer talks about having high-quality candidates. You know, apparently Mayor Driscoll, who is barred from a future post, isn't a good enough candidate. But Tom Dewey, who has been arrested for and now charged for being a pedo, is apparently a good enough candidate. Now, I'm not saying that Keir Starmer is looking for sexual abusers or anything like that, but the culture in the Labour Party clearly doesn't give a damn about sexual assault, because I think anyone expects that if you go through a candidate selection, that your history is checked. And of course, being arrested, that's on your file. I don't know how they missed that. It's insane to me. Now, I don't know if they just missed it in the selection process. I would doubt that if this flagged up, they would have selected him. I'm not saying that they knew about it, but I think that the idea that Keir Starmer and Lotto are trying to field the best quality candidates is obviously complete crap. Now, of course, when they bar left-wing candidates, that's their excuse. We know it's just an attack on the left. Again, Mayor Driscoll, who is obviously a good enough candidate because he's an elected mayor. So he was a good enough candidate, but he was barred because, not our high-quality candidates. But then you got someone like Tom Dewey, who has been charged for being pedo, got through the process. Now, this isn't just him. There is a wider issue of sexual assault in the Labour Party. Charlotte Nichols accuses Labour of gaslighting her after MP criticised party's handling of sexual misconduct claims. So Charlotte Nichols, the MP for Warrington North, has claimed that Labour only took action against suspended MP Geraint Davis after details about his alleged unacceptable behaviour became public knowledge. So clearly, Labour doesn't take sexual assault seriously enough. And furthermore, I think that's evident when Neil Coyle was readmitted to the party. Now, I've covered this before, but just to quickly gloss over, Neil Coyle was suspended as an MP for 5 days in March after a parliamentary probe found he had made racist comments towards a journalist. He was also found to have engaged in foul mouth and drunken abuse of a parliamentary assistant to another MP. In a common statement after the report was published, Mr. Coyle apologised for his drunk and offensive behaviour and attitude. So, not just specifically sexual assault, but just assault more broadly, Labour don't seem to care. But clearly the Labour Party has got worse. Now, since the dark days of Corbynism, the party has clearly got worse. It's expelled and suspended more Jewish people in the party. We've had, obviously, anti-black racism, Diane Abbott, for example, who was still suspended. What the hell was going on with that? We've got now Tom Dewey, who is a paedophile, who managed to get through the process. We've got Charlotte Nichols saying there clearly is no robust sexual misconduct process, and actually she was gaslit by her fellow parliamentary MP for pointing that out. And then we have Neil Coyle, who got readmitted to the party. So this is a complete shit show of the Labour Party. And it shows that Labour are obviously not fielding the best quality candidates. Anyone can slip through from time to time. I think it would be wrong for me to completely tie down Keir Starmer to one particular instance, because we know that with Jeremy Corbyn, there were some dodgy people there too. Jared O'Mara, who was jailed for 4 years after fraudulent expenses claims, and there's also been allegations of his behaviour. So yes, there are always going to be one person, a handful of people that can get through. But I think now it speaks to a wider systemic issue within the Labour Party. It's not just isolated incidents. Now, obviously, what's happening is we know there's a factional issue within the Labour Party, and they're doing their best to get rid of left-wing candidates. And I'm not saying there's a direct correlation between getting rid of the left and bad candidates, but it clearly plays a role, right? Because people like Luke Akehurst, who are on the NEC panel, who's just a terrible human being, Luke Nukem, as I like to call him, is deciding candidates based on factional positions or based on their politics. And of course, if you're focusing on that, then yes, you are going to get a plethora of really bad candidates. Instead, every candidate should be seen as equal. Every candidate should go through a stringent process, and it should not be based on politics. And I feel like if you have that approach, then you won't get these awful people coming into the Labour Party. But Labour are focusing so much of their efforts on factional wars, they're allowing a horrible, toxic environment inside the party. And I think that's completely wrong and disgusting. Now, of course, the famous quote from Wes Streeting, where there was issues of some members are being anti-Semitic in the Labour Party, that it was all Corbyn's fault because the fish rots from the head. But it seems like even now, even with Tom Dewey, there doesn't seem to be a mass media campaign against Keir Starmer saying Keir Starmer is a sexual abuser because he's allowing it to foster in the Labour Party. Well, if we use Wes Streeting's line, the fish rots from the head. See, it kind of doesn't work when you can now put it back to them. Now, Labour have declined to comment. At the time, the Labour group declined to comment on the reasons for his resignation. Just weeks later, it's unclear if they were aware of the arrest. He has now been charged with 3 counts of making indecent images of children, possession of extreme pornographic images, and possession of prohibited images of children. This guy is obviously a piece of shit, but I still can't understand how this person managed to get through. Again, when you're arrested, it is on your record. You can search these things up. So I'm just flabbergasted how the Labour Party and the candidate selection process didn't pick it up. One thing that was clear when Jeremy Corbyn was leading the party, of course, a lot of your focus is on attacking the Tories and trying to get into government. But part of your leadership is also to lead the party. So, of course, there was an element of responsibility in who and how the party operated, because we know Corbyn was blamed for everything. So, should we blame Keir Starmer for everything? Now, I don't think we should, because I think blaming Corbyn for everything was wrong. And I would say that blaming Starmer for everything is wrong. So I'm not going to directly blame Keir Starmer for Tom Dewey getting through. But I do think that Starmer does not give a toss about the toxicity of the party. His focus is just getting into government, and that means by pivoting the right on political issues. He doesn't care. That means banning former leaders and banning traditional socialists for the party, will also let in Christian Wakeford in. But you have a responsibility to make the party a safe place. And he isn't doing that. He hasn't shown that he's actively doing that. Even off the back of the Ford report, when there was huge issues mostly on the Labour right when it came to anti-blackness and abuse of Diane Abbott, Starmer said, he's taking care of it. But he didn't, because he didn't contact Martin Ford for ages, and he still hasn't really spoken to him. So he's not interested in that. And I don't think there's enough of a media campaign to go after Starmer for saying, your party is toxic, because it is. And I don't think he's going to do much about it. So what do you think? Does the fish rot from the head? Is it all Keir Starmer's fault? Drop a comment below and let me know.